Hi guys, welcome back to Two Stroke Running and Repairs. Today I'm doing a review for Super Cheap Auto on the ToolPRO 12V mechanics kit. It's a kind of newly released product that's got the 12V ratchet and impact gun. I've been using them for probably 6 months now, but I'll cut to a clip of me unboxing them and kind of my first impressions, and I'll voice that over a little bit. And then I'll kind of bring you in here and tell you about my current impressions of the tools. Alright, so here I am, I'm just unbagging it. Comes in the nice zipper case. Everything velcros into spot. All wrapped in plastic, which, you know, saved the planet, maybe not. Just going through, having a look at the impact driver, impact wrench. And looking at the battery. Nice positive fit into the charger. Having a look at the impact wrench, it's got the working out the on-off switch for the paddle, the lockout, but can't work out why it's not working. I switched batteries and it works. So there was something wrong with the other battery that came in it, and Super Cheap were really good about just swapping it over. As you can see here, just trying to work it, it's not working the other tool either. That's not really a problem because they swapped it over, no problems. Now just having a closer look, you've got the lockout switch there. I talk about that later. Variable speed, got that nice light. Really easy to change directions, just like a normal ratchet. And yeah, again, just testing out that variable speed. Battery indicator. Now over to the impact driver. You've got the battery indicator there, the nice LED light at the front. You've got the variable speed trigger, so you can see testing out fast, slow. You do get a bit of spark in the back of the motor, but most tools do. Bit of loose flop in the battery, but that's about it. Yeah. Here's the ratchet and the rattle gun after I've probably been using them pretty heavily for the last 6 weeks on a variety of things, lawnmowers, chainsaws, and my car, and I have to say they're really useful. I'll throw in some video of things I've been using them for, but mainly it's a little handheld drill style rattle gun. I find this is actually quite a nice little rattle gun, especially working on smaller equipment like lawnmowers and chainsaws. It tends to be able to get most of the nuts off, and usually if this doesn't get it off, my other 18V impact gun doesn't get it off either. So usually if this can't get it off, it's time to break out the air guns, which means it's well over what this thing's made for doing anyway. And that's really only with the larger things like the clutches on the chainsaws or bottom bolts on lawnmower base plates and stuff. But aside from that, it's a really great little gun. I have chucked some larger sockets on it than the 15mm. The kit only comes up to the 15mm, but I have put a 19 and even a 21mm on it, and it seems to do pretty okay at that. Alright, so here I am just taking some bolts out of the chainsaw with the Allen bits. The little ratchet's good for the rattle gun's good for this. Now with the socket, just undoing a couple of 13mm bar nuts. They're not usually on overly tight. And again, just some 8mm bolts. Again, they're never really on overly tight, but it's great for just quickly whipping them off. Here I am taking out some strut top bolts on our paddock bomb. These were pre-loosened, but it's really easy to just whiz them off. And here I'm just whizzing a couple of bolts onto one of my chainsaws 13, then a 19 adapted to 1/2 inch drive, and then just a couple of case bolts. It's really good to put them in nice and quickly, and then do the final torquing up with a normal T-handle. That's that. Now into the ratchet. This is probably, I've used this a lot more than the rattle gun, and the main reason I like it is that especially when you're removing nuts and stuff, or even putting them in, it's a lot more controlled, especially putting them in really. It's a lot more controlled speed-wise, and also especially when you're getting in working on suspension components and stuff on cars in the tighter engine bays. This makes it a whole lot easier to get in there. And the other thing is that when you're tightening things up, this stops at about 45 Newton meters. So you'll be ratcheting it up, and you might see this in some of the videos. It'll get to the tension, and it'll kind of fling your arm around a little bit, then it'll just cut off. And it won't go again until you fully release the trigger, which is better than air ratchets I've seen where basically they go and they just keep going and wanting to snap your wrist off until you release the trigger. And so here I am just tightening up a couple of strut bolts on the car. As you can see, it's nice and controlled, easy to get into that tight space, and when it comes up to torque, kind of kicks a little bit like I've talked about, and then it just kind of cuts out right there. Here it is just whizzing off some smaller bolts on a ride-on lawnmower that I'm fixing. Makes really short work of those, and you can see how that extension that I'm going to talk about, or I've talked about, really comes in handy. Yeah, just the extension helps really give you hand room. And then here just some smaller bolts into the magnesium case of a chainsaw. No problem over stripping them because it's a nice controlled speed. Yeah. So yeah, this is a really great tool for putting things in and out in a controlled fashion. And especially when things are really tight, especially the Allen bolts on chainsaws. This, you can put a lot more of a controlled pressure on to break it loose, whereas I find the rattle gun's more likely to strip it out. But yeah, I like that. It seems to do the job really well, and as you can see in most of my videos, even if the nut's fairly tight, if you just grab it and crack it loose like you would with a normal ratchet, this then just undoes it really easily. Now going into kind of the actual quality of the tools, the metal casting parts on them seem pretty good. I haven't had any problems with those. I really like the fact that you've got your battery gauge on the side here. That makes it really easy to check where your batteries are. The little LED lights on the fronts of both of them, that makes it really easy, especially when working in the tight engine bays of cars and stuff. Probably the only dislike I have about these tools is, one, the colour. The white just shows up everything, and these haven't even been used a lot, but you can already see a lot of the gunge and stuff over them. And the other thing would be the batteries. The batteries are, the fit of them is really quite loose, and it feels more kind of like they just kind of flop into place rather than really clicking in, unless you really jam them in hard. And as you can see, there's quite an amount of battery wiggle there, which isn't really that nice. And I'm also kind of scared that when I'm levering, you tend to want to grab there, but sometimes your hand moves up and you go, oh, that's flexing the battery a fair bit.
Also, the runtime on the batteries isn't the greatest. They are only 2 amp hour 12 volt batteries, but for that I probably can only, I was using this, removing the seats from my car and a couple of the other interior bits, and then putting in the new ones, and I flattened the battery doing that. So removing about 2 dozen bolts and putting them back in, I managed to flatten a battery on this. So I think I will just pick up the 4 amp hour battery because I do like these tools, but that's just one thing to note. The battery probably won't get you through a full day's work. Other thing I haven't touched on, the belt clip on the little 12 volt impact driver rattle gun is nice, especially when you're working in the car. You can kind of have it with you. The rubber on these, all the rubber, I've used them with greasy, dirty, oily hands, and it hasn't gone soft and spongy and kind of slippery like some of the other tools I've used. The forward and reverse on the rattle gun doesn't feel as positive as other ones I've used. It just kind of wants to flop either right into reverse or right into forward. It doesn't really want to sit in neutral. In neutral it's kind of like it's sitting in no man's land and it wants to slide either way. But that's just a little thing. I'll probably touch this on the unboxing video, but the rattle gun has the little like friction ring end, whereas the impact wrench has the ball detent, and that just means when you're putting the sockets on the ratchet, you've got to make sure the little holes on the sockets match up with that ball detent. But with the rattle gun, it doesn't matter. Whichever way you put them on, they want to fit and work, so that's good. The other thing is with the sockets, they're really nice sockets. They're actually some of the nicest budget impact sockets I have. And the other thing is, I think it'd be good if they included was an extension, because a lot of the time it's hard to get this, especially the ratchet, into places, because even with the socket on the end, your handles wanting to hit before the actual socket head. So by putting the extension on there, you put your socket out a bit further and you've got more room to get your hand in and out. That's just a couple of little things with the accessories. I mean, honestly, they don't have to include sockets at all, so it's kind of be happy that you get sockets with it and you don't have to buy them separately. That's a good thing. Other thing is, on the ratchet, the lockout switch is very useful, because especially when you're tossing this in your bag or the back of the car, there's a couple of times I haven't had that lockout switch on and I have just heard it kind of running like this, and that is the most irritating noise ever. So that lockout switch is very useful. The bag's a good size for them, and again, I kind of think it hasn't been thought of with accessories in mind. It fits the stuff it includes really well, but the accessories and stuff don't really fit. Like, I've got more assorted imperial sockets and stuff in there. The chargers works really well. I think, how long did it take me to charge up one of these batteries? Took me about an hour to charge one of these batteries, which is pretty good. That's about the same I get out of my Ryobi charger, so that's definitely not disappointing. And the fact that you can mount it on the wall I like, because I have all my chargers mounted on a wall next to the power point and I just plug them in as I need to charge equipment. But yeah, so that's the kit. Alright, so final little summary on these two tools, the rattle gun and the ratchet. They're really great little handy tools. Fit of them and the feel of them is really good. They're not overly flimsy and they're really good value for money. The batteries don't have the greatest battery life, but they still work. And an included extension on this Ratchet would be nice. But that's about it. I would definitely recommend you buy them if you're kind of anything from small engines right up to most things on cars. They come in handy, especially the Ratchet. The colour isn't the most practical, but that's kind of just what you get with it. Yeah. So thanks for watching, guys. Yeah, see you around.